Nostradamus. You know, just the name itself conjures up all these images of cryptic visions, right? Predictions of the future that have kept people hooked for centuries. But if you really want to understand his work, you have to go back, way back, all the way to the very beginning, his very first prophecy. This is it, the opening line. It just pulls you right into this world of solitude and mystery. It's the first piece of a puzzle, written almost 500 years ago, and believe me, it holds a secret that completely changes how we read everything else he ever wrote. So, we're diving into what I like to call the first enigma. This is Century 1, Quatrain 1, the very first thing you read in his famous book, Les Prophéties. And as we're about to find out, this isn't some prediction about a king or a battle. No, it's something way more personal and honestly far more important. Okay, so our next step is decoding the vision. How in the world do you crack a code from the 16th century? Well, we're going to break this thing down piece by piece. We're going to look at all the strange, mystical clues he left behind for us. The investigation starts right now. Here it is, the whole thing in its original form. Just read that for a second. It feels so ancient, doesn't it? A brass tripod, a flame coming out of solitude. It sounds less like he's predicting something and more like he's describing some kind of ritual. The very first clue really sets the scene. This isn't happening out in public or in some fancy royal court. This is a solitary, secret act. Right off the bat, he's telling us that his work comes from a place of total isolation and deep, deep focus. And then he throws this at us, a brass tripod. Now, that's not exactly a common piece of furniture, is it? It immediately makes you think of ancient oracles, like the oracle at Delphi. So what is a mystical object like this doing in his study? And then we get the final piece of this weird puzzle. A flame that just appears out of the quiet. And notice he calls it a slight flame. It's not some raging fire. This little flame is what makes his work successful. It's like the magic ingredient for whatever is about to happen. So let's put it all together. We've got a secret study, a mystical tripod, and this little guiding flame. It feels like we're missing the key that unlocks it all, right? What is Nostradamus actually trying to tell us with all this? All right, this is where it all starts to click. Let's make the words made clear. Because the first big breakthrough happens when we take that old-timey 16th century language and translate it into plain, modern English. Suddenly, the fog just begins to lift. Okay, look at this. On the left, you see the original text. But when you translate it, which you see on the right, the whole meaning shifts. He isn't just watching things happen. He's actively doing them. I place a brass tripod in front of me. This feels much more like he's giving us a set of instructions. And the shift is just huge. It's no longer just a random collection of strange images. With that modern translation, it sounds less like a prophecy he's seeing and a whole lot more like a process he's performing. The puzzle pieces are starting to fit. And this brings us right to the core of it all, the big reveal, the seer's secret. The true secret of this first quatrain isn't what it predicts about the future, but what it reveals about Nostradamus himself. Here's the most crucial point. The first prophecy isn't really a prophecy at all. Get this, it's an instruction manual. He's telling us, right from the very beginning, hey, this is how I get my visions. He's describing his own personal method for seeing the future. I mean, it breaks down into a super clear 4-step process. First, the setup, solitude. Second, the tool, the tripod. Third, the catalyst, the flame. And finally, the results. The vision becomes clear. He's laying out his entire method in the very first thing he writes. It's amazing. So why is this so important? Why does it matter? Well, because if the very first thing Nostradamus ever wrote is an explanation of his method, it completely changes how we should approach the hundreds of prophecies that follow. It's not just a prophecy, it's the master key to everything. So the takeaways here are absolutely crucial. This first quatrain isn't about some earthquake or a king falling from power. No, it's his personal recipe for divination. It sets the mystical stage for his entire collection of works, and it basically acts as a user's guide for us, the readers. Ultimately, we aren't just reading a random list of predictions. We are reading the results of a specific mystical process that he laid out for us right at the start. You have to see this first quatrain as the lens for everything that follows.
And that leaves us with a final, really fascinating question. If Nostradamus began by telling us how he sees the future, how does that change the way we see his actual predictions? Does knowing the method make them more believable or somehow even more mysterious? Now that's the real enigma.